Hello and welcome back to Have Your Say one-on-one shadow boxing. In the first half of this episode, we got our guest, who is already left, Emily Pierce, and we talked about problems at home with children's disability and the solutions or possible solutions. Now I got Michael Watson here in the studio, who's a parent and a child health advocate. Michael, what is your relations to children with disability? Why you are interested in this topic?
So Tibor, I have a little boy who's labelled with autism, and that's really how I started to become passionate about this area, because I recognised the real difficulties parents were facing. And because I had connections in health and originally did training in paediatrics, not in developmental paediatrics, I knew a lot of the people, and so I was able to connect and make a difference where it would be more difficult for other families to do that.
What's the name of your kid?
Matthew.
Matthew. And how old is Matthew?
So Matt's almost 10. He's 9 and just coming up to 10 in a few months' time.
So this little booklet in here, Matthew's story, is all about his life?
It's an allegorical story. So in fact, the story was given to us by a family, but it's an allegorical story, so it's kind of everyone's story. Everyone who reads the story relates to it, and certainly all parents of kids with developmental disability really strongly relate to it. And when I was first gifted this story and read it, it reduced me to tears. It is an extraordinarily powerful story. And I've subsequently taken to a lot of our community leaders, religious leaders, professional leaders, associations, and the number of people who have said that it's reduced them to tears is extraordinary. And one summed it up beautifully. He said, how can the whole world be summed up in Sochi Pages? So it's an extraordinary story, but the parents want the characters and everyone in it to remain anonymous. Basically, it's a story for everyone. It's not about any particular family. In fact, it's not even just about kids with autism. It's about anyone who's seen as being different. It tells us about the dangers of labelling and how that can have terrible human consequences.
And what are the terrible human consequences in today's life with or for child or kids with disability, autism or any other disability?
I think the greatest tragedy is that people automatically have a stereotype in their head about who and what a child that is labelled with autism is. And then terrible misconceptions that children with autism don't have feelings. I've heard parents say, my child can't love. And it's incredibly wrong, because children with the neurology of children with autism feel things much more deeply, and they have natural empathy and compassion, many of them, so that they can feel the feelings of everyone around them. That can be so painful that some children, I think, withdraw from it. But I think that's a terrible misconception that children with autism are incapable of love. It's quite the opposite.
So what is your journey, Michael, with your kid as a parent and as a child health advocate?
So we've been tremendously lucky, and so I originally got involved because I was able to navigate the system much more quickly. Still had an enormous amount of trouble doing it, and it wasn't easy. But I was in a very fortunate situation to be able to navigate it. And we had a wonderful childcare centre with really caring and understanding people. And Matt went to childcare from 6 months of age, and he did really well. He was included, he felt safe, he loved going to childcare. And the same with the local primary school for kindy and pre-primary. He didn't take his uniform off, he just loved getting in there, you know, and being part of it.
So how does it change and why?
I think our schooling system's very inflexible, and so in the younger years, we don't ask kids to sit in a chair for long periods of time. It's not so structured. It's much more friendly for kids with this sort of neurology. And I think at year one, the system changes. It becomes very structured, and it's hard for our kids to learn that way. I mean, Matt's incredibly bright. He spells much better than I can. He can do maths in his head that I couldn't possibly dream of doing. And he loves learning. He will learn 12 or 14 hours a day. He will have a book and he'll read and he understands all those things.
But not in the school.
But in the school, he's concentrating everything on sitting in the seat, and it's incredibly stressful for him. And so all his energy is going into sitting still rather than learning. So if he's at home, his arms might flap, he might run around the room, but he's learning all sorts of wonderful things and he's having a fantastic time. And that's difficult for other kids. And the reality is we recognise as parents, our kids aren't easy and they don't necessarily fit all day into a school environment. We have this sort of situation where a bureaucratic rule-based structure isn't allowing our child to access what he needs. And the anomaly is that the school is receiving all of his individual disability resource allocation, which is very generous, and there's enormous amounts being spent. So $42,900 is going to his school, and we're paying for his whole education support worker. So we're getting none of that. And I've been talking to...
So what's happening with the money, what the school got?
I don't know is the answer. We have what the Liberal government brought in as a student-centred funding model, which now means that each child is allocated a certain amount of money to support their education in schools.
Yes.
And what I've been asking the Director-General and the Minister for Education is to honour the policy which would allow the school to fund the education support worker for our child at home and at school.
At school.
Because we want the same person coming in and out. If he's having a bad day and he's having a meltdown, it's no benefit to the school to have him there. It's no benefit for him to be there. And it's that flexibility. The part home, part school model.
It's missing.
It's a lifeline. It's an absolute
But that's missing
lifeline
from the system.
It is, I am told at this point in time, and I'm waiting for the Director-General to come back to me, that under the Schools Act, the State Solicitor's Office is saying it's not possible. My feeling is this is the time of year where we change laws. I'm looking for strong, compassionate leaders in our politicians to look at this and change it.
Bureaucracy is producing certain assessments for everyone. What sort of documents you got in here you have to go through?
Look, I think one of the things, as we were trying to understand where the funding was going to, because we knew there was funding, we didn't know how much and where it was going.
Why not? Why don't parents know that system? Is it secretive or?
I don't know, Tibor, but we freedom of information our local school to find out about the funding process, simply so that we could understand it. And
everyone would like to understand it.
Part of what came out of that is we got a document called a Schools Plus online funding checklist. It was many, many pages, but one thing stood out, which I think really defines the problem, and that is there is a checklist and on it says restraint required when behaviour escalates. And it's a simple checkbox. The lowest category was once to twice a day, and the highest category 6 times a day or more by 1, 2 or 3 adults. And to me, I guess that really summed up the whole problem that we've got in the system, that no one in all this time has looked at that is a human child that's being restrained up to every hour.
At school or at home?
at school.
At school.
And no one's questioned that. No one said 5 to 6 times a day. The checklist here says 5 to 6 times a day by 2 adults. It's almost every hour.
Yes.
And as a parent, to see that for your own child is absolutely heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking.
And that's what's happening in schools.
I don't know whether this is just a funding model issue.
Or a practical.
Or a practical issue. But the point is, on the one hand, we have a policy, physical contact with students, which says emergency only. On the other hand, we have a bureaucratic document which only considers it relevant when a child is physically restrained once to twice a day. And I think that tells us we have a really significant problem in the way our system works.
And as people assist.
So I have asked the Director General and the Minister to provide us some summary data, not any individual data, but summary data of how many children have been physically restrained. And as yet, we haven't received any of that information, but I think it does need to be in the public domain. I just want both sides of politics to adopt this community-initiated, community-driven policy, and then I hope I don't have to vote for myself, because at the end of the day, if I can find parliamentarians that are strong and compassionate, I'll gladly vote for them. But at the moment, I don't have any choices. I can't even visit my local Member of Parliament. Don't know what else to do, Tibor. I've reached the end of the line of our democracy. All I want is to know that tomorrow my child's going to be guaranteed to be offered a good education. And the School of Isolated Distance Education is fantastic. It's brilliant. But I don't know that I'm going to get that even tomorrow.
Michael, by the sound of it, it's a very, very important story. And I wish you and your family to get some solution. And for everyone in WA, and I wish you, Michael, you and your family, you find a good solution. And also I wish everyone in Australia and WA who got children with disabilities to get their problem solved as well. Don't forget, next week, same time, same channel. And you'll say one-on-one shadow boxing.